Disrespected by airport staff, this incredible woman revealed a 1B lifeline with an amazing move. The airport buzzed with irritation as delays piled up, a heavy air of frustration blanketing the concourse. Sarah's fingers drummed anxiously on the metal armrest, each second a reminder of her chaotic day. After hours spent at a medical conference, she just wanted to head home to her daughter, Lily, who was likely pacing the floor, grappling with her own fears about college admissions. Time felt like an enemy, teetering on the precipice of a breakdown. When she finally gathered her breath to approach the airline staff for answers, the mockery she received hit like a punch to the gut. "You're just a nurse. What do you know about operational issues?" The dismissive tone gnawed at her insides, anger coiling with humiliation. She felt the heat of Lily's gaze on her, filled with disbelief, a reflection of her own struggles. In this packed airport, Sarah felt hollow. A nurse? Yes, but also a mother wrestling with self-doubt and the relentless expectations that bound them both. How could she teach Lily to believe in herself when she felt so invisible? This moment, cruelly amplified by her daughter's stare, deepened her conviction. She could not let this episode define her or her daughter. As she sat waiting, heart racing, thoughts spiraled. What would Lily think if she didn't stand up for herself? The anger surged into determination. Then came an unexpected ally, a retired executive lurking in the terminal, eyes crinkled in sympathy, a knowing nod of acknowledgement. He leaned in, sharing whispers about airline blunders, chaos beneath polished facades. Together they began their investigation, piecing together a looming financial collapse, a crisis veiled in bureaucracy. It was more than just revenge she sought. This was a chance for validation, an opportunity to turn humiliation into purpose, fighting for their futures. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The more she learned, the more her determination sharpened. Every report they uncovered painted a clearer picture of mismanagement, fueling her resolve. This betrayal from an industry that made its living off hard-working Americans had to change. It wasn't just about the airline's failures. It was about lifting herself and her daughter from the shadow of insignificance. The emotional turbulence was exhausting yet exhilarating. Could she succeed in shedding light on the dark underbelly while teaching Lily that strength comes from standing your ground? As cameras clicked and a crowd formed at the press conference, Sarah felt the weight of a million unseen sacrifices on her shoulders. The anxiety coiled in her stomach. All eyes were on her. Would they view her as just a nurse trying to make a name? The thought sent her heart pounding, not from fear but from desperate hope. And in the sea of people, she locked eyes with Lily. The pride shining from her daughter's face electrified her resolve. Sarah took a deep breath, prepared to shatter not just the airline's facade, but the insecurities binding them both. The question loomed larger than life. Could she successfully redefine the narrative and claim her place, not just for herself, but for Lily? The silence of the room prickled. She had to find a voice not just for herself, but for every woman who had ever felt dismissed. What awaited in the unfolding storm of revelation would change everything. The press conference room buzzed like a live wire, filled with journalists eager for a story and audience members waiting for a revelation. Sarah stood at the podium, her heart racing, the emotional weight of her journey pressed firmly on her chest. She glanced at Lily, who shifted nervously in her seat. The sense of duty to her daughter pushed Sarah past the initial butterflies in her stomach. It was her moment, a potential turning point not just for her profession, but also for her personal journey of empowerment. "Good afternoon, everyone," she began, her voice slightly wavering but steadily gaining strength. "I'm here today not just as a nurse but as an advocate for transparency and accountability in the airline industry." The words resonated, evoking a slight murmur from her audience. She felt her resolve crystallize. This wasn't merely about an airline's negligence. It was also a fight against invisibility, a battle for recognition in a world that often dismissed her skills and experiences. As she detailed the findings of her investigation, names of executives and dates of corporate mismanagement slipped off her tongue like thunderous revelations. The flush of confidence surged through her, and she could see nods of understanding from the crowd. Each piece of information laid bare the irresponsibility that had been cloaked in corporate jargon. An undeniable fire ignited within her. She could almost hear her own unsteady heartbeat mingling with the gasp of the audience. But alongside her growing confidence, a shadow loomed in her mind. Could she truly effect change in such a tangled bureaucracy? Doubts clawed at her, whispering that she might be just a small voice against the colossal structure of the airline industry. If she faltered, what message would it send to Lily? Would her daughter view her as just another woman silenced by societal forces? With each question, Sarah fought against those shadows. This was not merely self-doubt or insecurity. This was an opportunity, a chance to harness her voice and prove that humility and determination were allies, not weaknesses. She redirected the anxiety into passion, transitioning from dismay into a clarion call for integrity in aviation. Every day, thousands of nurses, teachers, and everyday workers pour their lives into their jobs. Yet we often remain unseen, she continued, her voice rising. But today we stand at a precipice. Either we continue to tolerate the status quo, or we demand accountability. The audience shifted, responding not just to her fervor but to the truth embedded within her words. She could see it. The faces around her reflected a mix of wondering curiosity and a collective awakening, even from those who initially dismissed her. It was exhilarating. The invisible woman her was becoming visible. However, amidst the applause and murmurs of agreement, anxiety bubbled back to the surface. What happened next? Would the airline executives respond with heavy hands or open ears? What if the backlash came crashing down, erasing everything she had fought so bravely to achieve? Those thoughts threatened to drown her in uncertainty once again. As the press conference closed, Sarah felt the weight of the crowd's gaze linger on her. She had thrust herself into a spotlight that felt both frightening and invigorating. The shadows of self-doubt still lurked behind her, but a flicker of determination surged anew. Each question would mark a step in her journey, not just for herself, but for every individual who had ever fought to be acknowledged. With resolve, she turned to leave the stage but paused, realizing she held the power to influence outcomes. The moment had transformed her, pushing her beyond the limits she had placed upon herself. She was not just a nurse. She was a catalyst for change, with every step forward igniting another flicker of light. And then it struck her. What if this was merely the beginning? As she stepped away from the podium, a thought clawed at her mind like a whisper urging action. The time had come to face the real architects of this crisis, the executives who had discarded countless voices, including her own. With her heartbeat echoing in her ears, she knew that the next step would define not just her narrative, but potentially reshape an industry. As the adrenaline coursed through her, an unexpected encounter in the aftermath of the conference loomed ahead. As Sarah stepped off the podium, the clamor of the room faded into the background, eclipsed by the beat of her own thoughts. She had stood before the crowd and let her voice carve out the truth. But now, the realization of the battle ahead settled heavily upon her. The executives she intended to confront were not just faceless names. They wielded power that could obliterate her efforts in an instant. Tightening her grip on the notes she held, she set her jaw, determination sparking within her. Outside the press room, she was met with a rush of reporters vying for comment. Questions flew at her from every direction, but she held steadfast, knowing that a slip could undermine the authority she had just begun to establish. As she made her way through the throng, she caught sight of a familiar face. Lisa, a former colleague from the hospital where they both had worked. The recognition flickered a moment of comfort, but it quickly shifted to unease as Sarah noticed the uncertainty etched on Lisa's face. "Sarah, I saw the conference, really powerful stuff. Just be careful, okay? They don't take kindly to threats," Lisa warned, concern threading through her tone. "You can't back down now. They need to hear this." "I need to make sure they hear it," Sarah replied, her voice grounded but carrying a hint of anxiety. Each word she spoke to Lisa echoed her resolve. But inside, a tempest brewed. What would she face next? Would she be the exception who toppled the colossal structures built from years of silence? Or would she simply add to the chorus of voices drowned out in the industry's insatiable machine? Without waiting for an answer, Sarah pushed forward into the parking lot, where a shared sense of urgency pulsed through her veins. Pulling out her phone, she searched for contact information for a few of the executives, names that had felt so distant until today. With each number she punched in, ambiguity cloaked her thoughts. Was she prepared to challenge these powerful figures who thrived on silence and subservience? The parking lot, once a mundane space, transformed into her battleground. Literal and metaphorical barriers loomed ahead, but she resolved to navigate them. 2 hours later, at a crowded cafe nearby, she met with one of the journalists who had approached her after the press conference. David was enthusiastic, passionate about shedding light on corporate malfeasance, and Sarah sensed they might form an unlikely alliance. He had offered to help her craft her narrative, presenting it to a wider audience. But what did it truly mean to divulge her story to a journalist? Could it be yet another step towards fame, or merely a dangerous gamble that would expose her to repercussions she wasn't ready for? Sarah, I wouldn't just report your findings. We can build a movement around them, David urged, his eyes wide with ambition. The prospect was exhilarating yet terrifying, an escalation of her personal quest that could spiral out of control. I want to, but what if they retaliate? What will happen to Lily? The question cracked her voice, revealing the wall she fought to maintain. David leaned closer, his tone earnest. What you're doing matters. Can't just end today. Think of Lily long-term. Isn't it better for her to see you as someone who fights for change than to live in a world where negligence prevails? A hard truth marinated within her mind. The thought of being a voice for others, a beacon for her daughter, pulled her back from the brink of retreat. Okay, she breathed, her heart thumping fiercely against her ribs. Let us do this. As they strategized their next moves, Sarah felt a shift. Each potential partnership functioned not as a mere act of defiance but as a way to channel her inner strength into something greater. Yet with that determination came a persistent dread, the thought gnawing at her. What would it truly cost? Just as they were finalizing their plan, an alert buzzed from her phone. A message from an unknown number flashed on the screen, sending a chill down her spine. With shaking hands, she opened it, and the words danced grimly across her vision. We know who you are. This is bigger than you think. The air around her intensified as dread settled in her stomach. Sarah realized the stakes had elevated sharply. The moment of reckoning was approaching, and she couldn't shake the certainty that it would come sooner than she anticipated. As Sarah stared at the message on her phone, her heart raced, and a cold sweat formed at her brow. Uncertainty enveloped her like a thick fog. Was this a mere scare tactic or something more sinister? Each pulse of her heart seemed to echo the stakes she had just raised. Doubts about what she was embarking upon gnawed at her insides. David noticed her fear and placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. We'll figure this out. But first, we need to focus on amplifying your voice, he said, voice firm but supportive. She exhaled slowly, grounding herself in the moment. You're right. I can't let this distract me. I need to prepare. Her voice gained strength as she spoke. Clarity was breaking through the haze of trepidation. They dove into their strategy, mapping out a timeline for their next steps. Each point of action felt exhilarating, like a jolt of electricity surging through her ambitions. David's passion ignited something inside her as they drafted potential op-eds and social media plans to draw attention to the issues she had uncovered. Let us reach out to some more allies, he suggested, tapping away on his laptop. You need powerful voices backing your cause. Someone with clout. A quick list came to her mind. Researchers, advocates, experts who had fought similar battles. With each name, Sarah felt the connections she had cultivated throughout her career begin to bear fruit. But as they worked tirelessly into the evening, the message weighed heavily on her. The looming threat felt like a shadow beneath her every thought. Who were these people and what could they really do? The chilling notion of retaliation hung in the air, festering like a wound. How could she put Lily in danger? Sarah, you have the right to speak up. And you can't let fear dictate your actions, David said, breaking her reverie. It's time to choose. Will you be a victim of the silence? Or will you dig deeper and fight back? His words reverberated within her, a drumbeat of urgency. A victim was the last thing she wanted to be. Combating injustice had ignited something in her, transforming her from a bystander into an advocate. I'll reach out to Dr. Patel, she decided suddenly, her fingers flying over her phone to type the message that would begin a chain reaction. Dr. Patel was a well-respected figure in medical research, someone whose authority could lend credibility to her cause. As responses poured in, Sarah felt a swell of empowerment. They began to organize an online campaign, gathering testimonials from others affected by the same issues. Each story added weight to her own and blended into something larger, giving life to her mission. But with that came another message, this one sent directly from an unknown contact, more insidious than the last. Stop before it's too late. Fear gripped her. Each word carved out new doubts. Could this pushback cost her everything? Yet, the escalating threats ignited her resolve. They knew she was a threat now. I can't turn back, she whispered to herself, the words igniting a fierce flame of determination. Are you ready? David asked, his eyes locking onto hers, recognizing the moment's gravity. Yes, she breathed, feeling clarity wash over her. Let us unleash the truth. With the day's momentum under her feet, she realized she was not just fighting for herself but for every individual who had suffered in silence, her own fears turning into an arsenal of bravery. As she moved forward with purpose, Sarah understood that the battle was not merely against a faceless corporation but against an unjust system ingrained in complacency. Yet with every step she took into the light, darkness lurked behind her, unrelenting and oppressive. Just as they prepared to launch their campaign, a phone call interrupted an untraceable number. Sarah hesitated, the weight of her choice hanging in the balance. Answer it, David urged, sensing her trepidation. Taking a deep breath, she pressed accept, her heart racing as she brought the phone to her ear, ready to confront whatever shadow awaited her. Sarah, a low voice rasped, thick with menace. You've crossed a line. The tension escalated as she sensed her life was on the precipice of irrevocable change. Would she endure the impending storm, or would this be the unraveling of everything she had fought to protect? Sarah froze, the voice replaying in her mind like a ghostly echo. The world around her blurred momentarily. The walls of her apartment seemed to close in, turning the space into a cage. She had anticipated backlash, but this direct warning from an unknown entity sent chills cascading down her spine. Who is this? She managed to stammer, her voice tinged with defiance she didn't fully feel. The low chuckle that reverberated through the phone only deepened her unease. Details don't concern you, but know that your actions have consequences. You think you can expose the truth and not suffer for it? The walls that once felt like a safe space now felt like a loudspeaker for her fears. An urgency twisted her stomach, propelling her to action. I'm not afraid of you, she lied, seeking to reclaim her own power. The line went dead, leaving a deafening silence in its wake. The adrenaline coursing through her veins demanded she act. What do you want to do? David asked, his voice cutting through her spiraling thoughts. I want to follow this lead, she asserted, determination hardening her resolve. This could be the proof that turns the tide against them. David nodded, though uncertainty flickered in his expression. Let us be smart about it. We need to gather everything we can without drawing attention. He began outlining a plan, focusing on digital footprints, analyzing data, cross-referencing public records. Yet, Sarah's mind was racing ahead, unfurling ideas like a scroll of endless potential. Their campaign transformed from an abstract concept to a concrete operation. Sarah had learned to harness her fear, channeling it into strategy. A revelation emerged, driven by both a desire for justice and a sense of duty to those who had shared their stories with her. She tapped into a newfound resilience. She began drafting a new op-ed, something sharper, more personal. This wasn't just an expose. It was her declaration of independence from fear. The risk becomes the point, she penned, her heart pounding as she crafted a narrative that would entwine her personal experience with the broader implications of the systemic issues they were facing. She was no longer merely an advocate. She was a crusader. Each keystroke propelled her forward, each word echoing the tales she had collected from others like her. The stories swirled around her, breathing life into her purpose, transforming her from a mere participant into a fierce warrior as the sun set. Painting the sky in hues of crimson and indigo, a sense of clarity began to form. Deep within, she realized that while the threats loomed large, the fight had ignited everything she had been aspiring to become. Suddenly, the phone buzzed again. It was a series of texts from Dr. Patel. "Let us meet.
Urgent."
The message sent a shock of clarity through her. This could be it, the chance to align herself with someone who might have the power and resources to elevate her battle. "Are you ready?" David asked again, echoing the earlier question but now laced with newfound understanding. "I am," she replied, adjusting her stance as her confidence resurfaced. With each moment, she felt herself evolving. The journey, once filled with doubt, was now a path paved with conviction. But in her gut, she still sensed the looming danger, a reminder of how high the stakes were. As she typed a quick reply to Dr. Patel, another nameless number appeared on her screen. Her heart dropped. Should she answer or run deeper into the cover of the fight? The grip of anxiety returned. She felt cornered yet strangely empowered. What if I'm just bait? She thought, fear creeping in. But then a surge of determination coursed through her as she pressed accept. It was about time to confront whatever awaited her on the other end. Would it be an ally or an enemy? "Hello?" she said, the weight of her choices heavy in the air. The stakes just got personal, and Sarah knew it was time to face the truth head-on. The voice on the other end was unmistakably familiar, sending a cascade of conflicting emotions through Sarah. "It's about time you answered." Jack's voice was smooth, dripping with a false sense of camaraderie. Recollections of their past dealings, a mix of tense negotiations and quiet betrayals, flooded her mind. But she forced herself to stay grounded. "Why are you calling me now?" she demanded, her tone firm despite the unease swirling within her. There was a brief pause, then he chuckled, a sound that made her skin crawl. "I think you know why, Sarah. We're not done yet. You've stirred up quite the storm with your little investigations, and I'm here to help you with that." "Help?" she scoffed, disbelief coloring her voice. "Why would you help me, Jack? You've always wanted to put me in my place." The silence stretched, thickening the tension in the air. She could almost see Jack's calculated smirk. "Let's just say I have an interest in keeping my own skin safe. And the longer you poke around the hornet's nest, the more likely you are to attract a sting. Plus, your current lead, well, it could be useful to me." His motives were suspicious at best, yet something in his tone piqued her curiosity. "What do you know about Dr. Patel?" she pressed. "More than you think," he replied smoothly. "He and I have crossed paths on several occasions. If you want to pull at the threads of corruption in this city, you'll need allies. And I can help you navigate that world safely." A part of her was tempted using his resources could provide a shortcut through her maze of information and deceit. But trusting Jack felt like opening the door to a trap. She had to weigh the cost of collaboration against her convictions. "And what do you expect in return?" "Just a little cooperation," he stated almost too casually. "You keep me informed about your progress, and I'll make sure you don't get eaten alive. It's a fair exchange, wouldn't you say?" She closed her eyes, envisioning the precarious balance she had to maintain. The specter of danger loomed larger as she realized how easily she could become a pawn in his game. But the desire to advance her quest for truth gnawed at her resolve. "I need time to think," she finally said, her voice steady but internally rattled. "Time is something we're running out of, Sarah," Jack warned. "Decide wisely." The call ended, and dread settled heavy in her chest. Adrenaline surged through her again as she glanced at the details she had collected about Dr. Patel. Perhaps her next move required more than just mulling over Jack's offer. She needed allies her own way. As she gathered her notes, A deeper understanding began to crystallize, a realization that she could forge a path that didn't rely solely on the dubious help of old foes. "Let us prepare for tomorrow," she told David, who had been quietly listening, assessing the situation. "Whatever happens, I want to meet Dr. Patel with a strong position." "Are you sure about this course of action?" he asked, concern etching his features. "Absolutely," she replied, determination surging anew. "We're not just fighting a battle, we're waging a war. And wars require strategy. I need to understand my enemy and my allies better." David nodded, the faint hint of admiration in his expression. Their conversations shifted into planning mode, dissecting every possibility, potential downsides, and manipulating scenarios into her favor. Each scenario felt like an intricate dance of power, where she was no longer unsure. She was driving her destiny forward as the clock crept toward midnight. A burning resolve nestled in Sarah's chest. Each threat was a chance to sharpen her strategies, to embrace her power, and she was not backing down. She remembered the stories she had gathered, the faces of those who had been wronged. They fueled her fire. Before she drifted off to sleep, her mind swirled with questions. Was Jack truly a new ally in disguise, or just a harbinger of greater danger? And what if Dr. Patel held more secrets than she anticipated? Determined to harness these encounters to her benefit, she clung to the notion that there was strength in knowledge. She would meet them both soon, heads held high. But as she tucked herself into bed, an unsettling thought crept into her mind. What if she wasn't just facing enemies in the shadows, but also treachery far closer to home? The path was fraught with risks, and her next decisions could alter everything. The sun rose timidly, casting long shadows across the desk cluttered with papers detailing Dr. Patel's research. Sarah pulled her gaze from the window, invigorated yet apprehensive. She could feel the weight of anticipation coiling in her chest like a tightly wound spring. Today marked a significant turning point, and she was resolute in her crafting of her narrative. Before heading out, the early morning quiet transformed her living space into a sanctuary for strategy. She pored over her notes, cross-referencing data, torn between the urge to reach for the truth and the caution that hung like fog in the air. Trusting Jack felt like standing too close to a cliff's edge. To step back would mean retreading old fears, while stepping forward risked an unforgiving fall. As she finalized her approach, she consciously drew in deep breaths, letting clarity wash over her. She had never envisioned herself in such a game, but with each passing moment, she felt the pressures and responsibilities shift. This was no longer merely about her. It was about the stories, so many lives entwined in shadows, waiting for illumination. Her desire to expose the corruption burned brighter, her conviction hardening into steel. David appeared at the door, adjusting his tie with a look of purposeful determination. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, his voice steady, yet tinged with concern. "I have to be," she replied, meeting his gaze with a fierce resolve. "We have the opportunity to turn the tide. Dr. Patel holds the key, and I intend to unlock it." Their drive through the city was punctuated with silence, both grappling with the gravity of the impending encounter. As they navigated toward the research facility, an awareness of each silent partner's role in this operation curled around them. Sarah's plan crystallized in her mind. She needed to approach Dr. Patel not just as an investigator but as a partner seeking allies in a landscape riddled with betrayal. Upon arrival, the immaculate facade of the facility loomed ahead, a stark contrast to the murky undercurrents they were about to dive into. Sarah's heart raced, and she took a moment to steady her breath. She would need armor today, sharp and unyielding, fortified with the knowledge she had garnered and the quiet confidence that had emerged within her. Inside, the sterile walls felt claustrophobic, yet they also reflected her burgeoning tenacity. She was prepared, not just to inquire but to identify and claim any unspoken truths that floated in the air, ready to be unveiled. The meeting room felt distant from her inner tumult as she entered. Dr. Patel stood, a figure embodying intellect and authority, but also ambition shaped by the circumstances around him. "Sarah," he greeted, his voice steady but curious. She could see the flicker of interest in his eyes, a recognition of her efforts and the importance of what she had unearthed thus far. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," she began, her tone assertive. "I believe we share mutual interests and a common goal in revealing the deeper issues surrounding your work." The words hung in the air, and she watched Dr. Patel's expression shift, his mind hesitating between trust and caution. This was a threshold moment, two lives poised on a collision course of ethical dilemmas and hidden agendas, as they navigated through their conversation. Sarah felt exhilarated, yet conscious of the stakes. Every answer, every question, was a dance of influence, a push and pull of control that left her excited and terrified. When the conversation turned toward Jack, she could sense tension slicing through the atmosphere. "You know he's a dangerous player," Dr. Patel remarked, his eyes narrowing, as if assessing her ability to maneuver this minefield of alliances. Her heart thudded. There it was, the risk she had feared was neared to realization. "I'm aware of his history," she replied, allowing a slight edge of defiance to seep into her voice. "But I've learned that information is power, and I intend to take it." The room shifted at her declaration. She glimpsed Dr. Patel reevaluating her potential in a new light. She could either embrace this moment or falter, risking everything she had forged thus far. "Every decision comes with a price," he said softly, but she felt the weight behind the statement. Her mind raced. She needed to be perceptive and decisive. With the specter of Jack looming, trusting Patel felt like a gamble. As their conversation unfolded, the stakes heightened and a critical question lingered. Who would emerge from this encounter unscathed? Sarah understood now that her path was not merely about rooting out corruption but also mastering the game itself. And as she spoke, her voice unwavering against uncertainty, Sarah understood she was ready for the collision ahead. The moment of truth was deepening, one she had never anticipated. But even as she felt a surge of confidence, a shiver of doubt crept in. Would her resolve hold against the revelation that awaited her? The chessboard was set. Now it was time to play. With that thought burning bright, Sarah prepared for the unexpected. Would she emerge victorious or face the ramifications of her choices come crashing down? The air felt dense in the room, almost as if the very walls bore witness to the high stakes of their conversation. Sarah kept her posture erect, a shield against the whirlwind of uncertainty swirling in her heart. Dr. Patel's gaze seemed to dissect her, peeling back layers of her resolve to reveal the raw nerves lying beneath. She had learned that clarity came not from force but from finesse, yet this delicate dance demanded every ounce of her newfound fortitude. "Sarah," Dr. Patel said, running a hand through his tousled hair, "you must realize that navigating this landscape isn't just strategic, it's perilous. Jack's grip is strong, and those entangled with him tend to have their own agendas." His words struck her like a bolt, igniting a flicker of doubt, but also awakening her instincts. Rising to the challenge felt like unlocking a vault of potential she hadn't accessed before. "You aren't the first to tell me that," she replied, her voice steady despite the crackling tension. "But you also know that power can be redirected. It doesn't have to stand unchallenged." This moment belonged to her, a pivot where she could wrench control from those who had long held the reins. Patel leaned against the table, arms crossed, a contemplative expression crossing his features. "And what do you propose? We unveil the truth? But at what cost?" His skepticism was a gauntlet thrown at her feet. The confidence she had conjured needed to transform into something actionable. The stakes felt globally encompassing her career, her moral compass, even lives entangled in the fabric of this revelation. She could feel the pulse of her own ethical convictions thrumming at the base of her thoughts, propelling her forward. "Let us look at the data," she urged, her voice crisp against the backdrop of sterile walls. "We dissect what's hiding in plain sight. You have access to findings that could expose the discrepancies in Jack's operations." A moment passed as Dr. Patel scrutinized her. She could almost see the gears turning in his mind, the recognition that she wasn't merely reaching for the truth. She was positioning herself as a strategic ally. "You know this could put you at risk. Ratting out Jack, even indirectly, could have consequences." Her pulse quickened, Here was the moment to either embrace her role or retreat into shadows. We both want the same outcome, don't we? It just requires a leap of faith. The stakes were laid bare, and she sensed the air thickening with possibility. Her intuition blazed with the awareness that risk was the price of transformation. As he considered her, Sarah realized that every heartbeat echoed her determination. This was her crucible, a test of her mettle and patience. She had navigated a series of precarious situations before, but never had they felt so intimately tied to her core beliefs, nor had they involved another's fate so directly. "All right, let us discuss the data," he replied after what felt like an eternity. "But understand, if this goes south, I want to be your safety net." Understood. As they began traversing the complexities of the research, Sarah felt a surge of exhilarating empowerment wash over her. She was no longer just an investigator but a collaborator wielding knowledge as a weapon against the looming threat of corruption. Hidden between the lines of their discussion were blueprints not only to guide her actions but to catalyze a movement she had not anticipated. But just as clarity began to materialize, an unsettling thought popped into her mind. David's warning echoed a reminder that trust was a slippery slope, particularly with those wrestling against powerful foes. Could she really rely on Patel not to turn this back on her? The realization sent a chill spiraling down her spine, urgency creeping back in. Trust could bring allies, but it also opened doors to formidable betrayals. "Where do we start?" she asked, trying to mask her trepidation with professional resolve. Dr. Patel's mouth curled into a slight grin as he opened a folder, revealing documents that pulsed with undisclosed specifics. But the closer they drew to the precipice of revelation, the more she felt the weight of her choices pressing against her chest. An invisible membrane of tension surrounded them, sealing their fates as they delved deeper into the murky waters of truth. Just then, the door cracked open, and the office lights flickered ominously. A figure stepped inside, shadowing the potential light of their breakthrough. Sarah's heart raced instantly. Safety nets were rapidly dissolving. "Sorry to interrupt, but we need to talk." Jack's voice cut through the room with an edge of danger. Would they plunge into chaos just as the embers of hope ignited? The room held its breath, and so did she, for now the ultimate test of her newfound power was spiraling into view. The time had truly come to face the storm. The tension in the room snapped like a tightrope fraying under pressure. Jack's presence loomed large, a dark cloud threatening to smother their progress. Sarah's mind raced, searching for the balance between confrontation and strategy. "What do you want, Jack?" she managed, forcing her voice to remain composed despite the surge of adrenaline. Dr. Patel stood beside her, his body taut, as if ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. Jack's eyes flickered between them, an unsettling mix of arrogance and calculation. "I've heard some whispers. Something about reviewing data that doesn't concern you," he replied smoothly, a smirk tugging at the corners of his mouth. The disarming tone disguised the menace, but Sarah could feel the antagonistic energy radiating from him. Patel clenched his fists, signaling his readiness to defend their position. But Sarah knew they had to tread carefully. A direct confrontation might provoke Jack into a reckless response. They were in a chess game and she was still learning the moves. Just the regular checks, making sure everything is above board. She countered, leaning into the aura of professionalism she had cultivated. "You know how it is, we can't compromise integrity for convenience." Jack tilted his head slightly, a flicker of interest in his gaze. "Interesting. Most people would think twice before checking up on me." There was an echo of challenge in his voice that sent warning bells jangling in her mind. "You're not untouchable," Sarah shot back, summoning every ounce of courage she possessed. She needed to assert her position, to demonstrate that fear wouldn't govern her actions. With each moment, she felt the need to prove herself burgeoning within her, no longer just a quiet observer, but an active participant in a risky game. Jack held her stare, the air thick as they measured each other's resolve. "Be careful, Sarah. You might just find out that investigating deeper can lead to buried truths that are better left unearthed." His words hung ominously in the air, and she felt the weight of his threat reverberate within her. Those buried truths could endanger everything she sought to protect. In this moment, Clarity spun within her a realization that to dismantle Jack's empire of secrets, she needed to embrace her fears rather than flee from them. Jack stepped closer, and she could see the gleam of challenge in his eyes, a predator sizing up its prey. The distance between them was no longer physical, but a chasm of conflicting intentions. He was unafraid to play dirty, and she had to be unflinching in her counterplay. Dr. Patel and I are committed to transparency, she stated, finding strength in the fierce determination coursing through her veins. Whatever you think you hold over us is about to change. A flicker of surprise crossed Jack's face, but he quickly masked it with his usual bravado. I suggest you choose your allies wisely, Sarah. One misstep and the fall can be brutal. As he turned to leave, the door swinging shut with a finality that echoed through the room, relief washed over her momentarily before anxiety took hold. They had not just survived an encounter. They had exchanged a warning shot. Sarah felt the pulse of reality again. The stakes were high, and the line between victory and defeat had never felt so precarious. Jack's warning echoed in her mind, the fear igniting a sense of purpose. The most powerful weapon was knowledge, and every decision would broaden her scope of understanding. Dr. Patel turned to Sarah with an expression that was both proud and concerned. You held your ground well, but Jack's right about one thing: trust is a gamble. I know, she replied, feeling the weight of possibility settling on her shoulders. It's time we strategize beyond this moment. If we're going to outmaneuver him, we need to anticipate every move. Patel nodded, a renewed determination flickering in his eyes. I'll get us everything we need. But remember, Sarah, knowledge can be a double-edged sword. Use it wisely. As he gathered the documents spread across the table, Sarah felt an insatiable drive propelling her forward. With every beat of her heart, she was evolving past the shadows of doubt and moving closer to the light of truth. There was no turning back now. But as they began their analysis anew, the familiar gnawing anxiety resurfaced. Jack was aware of their intentions, and she hadn't truly recognized the extent of his power over the situation. What might his next move be? The chilling uncertainty hung in the air, heavy and ominous. Would they possess enough insight to stay ahead in the relentless game? The shadows of betrayal loomed larger than ever. She felt the pulse of danger resonant with the rhythm of her evolving resolve. As they delved deeper into the documents, a sharp noise across the hall echoed ominously. What awaited them in this dangerous game of treachery? As she looked at Patel, a nagging thought unfolded. Could the next revelation shatter her newfound strength? The future was a murky abyss, and she needed to navigate it with precision and courage. The days blurred together in a tumult of meetings, strategy sessions, and endless digital correspondence. Yet for Sarah, each moment solidified her commitment to the truth. After the confrontation in the research facility, the air crackled with a mixture of determination and unease. She had faced Jack and stood her ground, but now her path ahead required care, not just raw courage. The cold reminder of Jack's potential sabotage remained lodged in her mind, urging her to evolve further. Working alongside Dr. Patel, they meticulously synthesized their discoveries. As they explored the intricate details of corporate misconduct, Sarah transformed her anxiety into clarity. Each file they reviewed widened her perspective and fueled a growing confidence. She understood that she wasn't simply illuminating her own experience. She was revealing a struggle shared by countless others. The nurses, teachers, and everyday workers, their stories were interconnected, waiting to emerge from the shadows. One afternoon, as they delved deeper into the data, a pivotal moment crystallized. Sarah, this could be the tipping point, Dr. Patel said, eyes sparkling with excitement. They had uncovered a pattern of negligence throughout the airline that echoed the very dismissal Sarah had faced. With newfound vigor, she envisioned a comprehensive campaign, an exposé paired with personal narratives that could captivate public attention and demand accountability. The urgency of transformation ignited a fire in her belly, by aligning their research with testimonials from those impacted. Sarah could craft a compelling narrative that demanded to be heard. Each new story garnered not just sympathy, but also urgency. She mobilized the testimonies, seamlessly weaving them into a powerful exposé, unearthing secrets buried under disinterest and complacency. With her heart racing, she pushed their findings into wider circulation, utilizing social media and reaching out to influential allies who could amplify their message. Amid the flurry of action, an unexpected response came from the wider professional community. Support poured in from nurses, advocacy groups, and even some politicians who recognized the need for reform. Sarah felt the staggering swell of validation. She had stepped out from the shadows of her self-doubt and into the realm of fierce advocacy. Solidifying her own identity as both a nurse and a leader, her confidence soared. Eventually, the moment came. The press conference was scheduled to discuss their findings formally, echoing the commencement of a new dialogue within the industry. Leaning against the podium, Sarah glanced at the crowd, searching for Lily's familiar face. Seeing her daughter nodding in encouragement sparked an exhilarating rush. The shy, invisible woman was morphing into a figure of empowerment, a force of change. Taking a steadying breath, Sarah began. Today isn't just a day for discussion. It's a declaration of change. We are here to unveil a truth that has long been obscured, to give voice to those who have been silenced. Each word resonated as she laid out the findings, connecting the dots between negligence and its repercussions, both financial and personal. The audience shifted, rapt in attention. As she spoke, she could feel the strength radiating from her core. The collective energy from the crowd reinforced her belief. She was no longer confined to the narrative of fear. Every statistic imbued her voice with authority. The nursing community stood with her, back straight and ready to confront an industry's complacency, challenging the very norms that had made them feel invisible. When the press conference concluded, it was not just with applause. It marked a turning point, a moment of validation that spread like wildfire. Reporters flocked to her for interviews, eager to capture her transformation and her unwavering message. External recognition flowed in waves. Local outlets featured her story, and soon, national media began to take notice. Sarah stood on the cusp of something monumental, poised for change both personally and professionally. In the aftermath, Sarah received accolades from her peers, recognition for both her advocacy and courage to stand against power structures. Whatever threatening shadows remained began to fade as public support rallied around her cause. A board of inquiries was initiated. The airline's executives had no choice but to face scrutiny, and Sarah, once merely a nurse overlooked in the hustle of a busy airport, was now a respected voice, commanding visibility and influence. Yet, beyond the acknowledgments and media spotlight, Sarah felt the real triumph lay within. She had cultivated resilience born from adversity, and through this experience, forged an unbreakable bond with her daughter, who had witnessed her evolution. Sarah emerged as an emblem of empowerment, someone who now stood unashamedly in her worth. She had transcended mere survival. She was thriving, teaching Lily that the most powerful platform comes from declaring one's truth. As real change began to unfurl around her, Sarah recognized that her journey was only beginning. Strength, she discovered, was rooted not just in speaking out but in sharing that truth with others. As history often teaches, the pen can be mightier than the sword. Looking forward, she understood that she would continue to fight, not only for herself but for countless others standing in the shadows, waiting for their moment to thrive. The challenges ahead would surely demand vigilance, but swallowed in the newfound confidence, she could envision not just a brighter path ahead for herself, but the legacy she aimed to inspire in generations to come. This wasn't merely the conclusion of a singular struggle. It was the reclaiming of a narrative, woven into the fabric of systemic integrity. And now, more than ever, she was prepared to amplify her voice relentlessly. Now is the moment to embrace this journey. If you felt moved by Sarah's transformation and the power of personal triumph, you need to subscribe now to the channel to ensure you never miss an exclusive emotional story. Your support matters tremendously. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this inspiring conclusion. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, and comment your thoughts and theories about this powerful ending. Stand with us as we continue to tell these important stories.